Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. It is a beautiful Friday morning, February 4th, 2022. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time to review strategies, success stories, tactics, tips, but really to support you in whatever way that seems most relevant at the time, as we're always listening to your questions, comments, and concerns. So with that, today, we're going to drill into the 4 C's. Now, when I labeled this, I considered it the topic to be, it's too good to be true. Because as we kind of hit on yesterday's Zoom training, some people will say, well, you can't guarantee anyone $100,000. That's too good to be true. Well, that's a position of illiteracy when they suggest that, because we're not saying sign up for the access to capital program. We're going to wave a magic wand and all of a sudden $100,000 will appear. But instead, what we're offering to do is 3 things, aren't we? Number 1, build financial literacy, go through the 4 modules, award-winning curriculum developed by the FDIC, promoted by the SBA. Secondly, we're going to build a lender-compliant loan package, which is necessary. And third, we're going to help them meet the underwriting criteria to be able to qualify for at least $100,000. And so that we're going to drill into 2 of those 3 today. We're not going to talk about the financial literacy as much, but we are going to talk about and answer the question, what is the secret to getting at least $100,000? Well, the answer is have a lender compliant loan package and meet the underwriting criteria. What's so important that you take away from this, and you probably already realize it and recognize it, but different sources of capital have different underwriting criteria. There's not just one set of criteria that works for all sources of capital. Instead, each source of capital has a different underwriting criteria. So that's why we go through the 4-week process, build the loan package out, gain an in-depth understanding of the client's mitigating circumstances. Then we can recommend the right type of capital based upon their mitigating circumstances, and then reconcile, do they meet the underwriting criteria of that or not? If so, we proceed to funding. If not, we need to address any deficiencies. So what we're going to do this morning is go through the 4 C's. We used to talk about the 3 C's. I always kind of implicitly let you know there's actually more than 3, but for going forward, we're going to focus on the 4 C's. There are more than 4, quite frankly, but we're going to focus on the primary 4. Just like credit bureaus, right? Are there only 3 credit bureaus for personal credit? Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion? Absolutely not. There's many, many more credit bureaus, but that's what we tend to work with. For business credit, are there only 3? Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax Business, and Experian Business? No, there's many more, but we tend to focus on those 3. So we're going to focus on what's most relevant. We're focusing on the 4 C's today. All right, so the first C is credit. And so access to capital clients are assisted in improving and are optimizing both of their credit profiles. Well, what are the 2 profiles? Well, they should have and will have, if they work with us, on having a strong business credit profile, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and their personal credit. Now, we have to continue to go back and reinforce, do all sources of capital require good business credit? No. There's not ever a universal answer that all sources of capital require. Do all sources of capital require good personal credit or business credit? No. There's some sources of capital that only look at business credit, some that only look at personal credit, and frankly, some that don't look at credit at all. So we understand that. I just want to reinforce that because I think that's where a lot of clients will get off track, is they don't understand that baseline principle. Different sources of capital have different underwriting criteria. Thus, do you have to have all 4 C's to get funded? No, you don't. Is it helpful? The more C's you have, the more options you have, the more credible you look on paper? Certainly. Okay, so let's clarify how we help access to capital clients with business credit. So you remember that there are 4 modules that we go through. The second module is on credit. We talk about personal some, but we introduce and educate on business credit. What is business credit? Business credit is where we're accessing credit under the EIN with no personal guarantees. Very attractive. There's some for-profit businesses out there that charge hundreds or thousands of dollars to do what we're doing for no additional cost for access to capital clients. So for example, we're going to help them build their Dun & Bradstreet Paydex score. That's the measurement of score going from a 0 to a 100 scale to be 80 plus. That would make them credible. So that's an example of the outcome. And we primarily accomplish that by adding trade lines. So typically with business credit, there's not usually an issue of how do we get rid of bad business credit. It's usually they've not built their business credit. So we're focused on building positive, adding trade lines, and building their Paydex score. We have a business credit expert here in-house that will work with those clients. So the first of the 3 C's that we're talking about today is credit. And the first type of credit profile is business credit of the business entity itself. We help all access to capital clients that have an interest in that doing that. The second type of credit profile is personal credit, and the way that we address that is through the 60-day credit sweep. This used to be a fee-based service. Now it's free for access to capital clients. In addition to that, we can help them add trade lines. And if you'd like more information on that, that's on the free 60-day credit sweep page. So let's pause there before we move forward. So today we're talking about what's the secret to getting at least 100,000. We're drilling into the 4 C's. The first C is credit. Credit has 2, each client should have 2 credit profiles, their business credit profile and their personal credit profile. And we briefly addressed how we assist each. Does anyone have any questions on credit, the first C, before we move forward? If so, if you'll type that into the Q&A, the question and answer box of Zoom, kind of like chat, and then we'll move forward. Give you a moment to ask any questions on that. As a regional vice president or as a white label partner, you're not burdened with doing this work. So this is part of what we do with the Access to Capital program, but it's not your burden. So should you be aware of this? Of course. Should you be able to encourage your clients to get engaged with what we can do to help them with their first C? Obviously. Do you need to do it? No. So you're not the person that's going to be consulting with them and adding the trade lines or building their business credit or the 60-day credit sweep. So you just need to know enough to be aware of its existence, and then we're going to work with them to implement. Keep it simple for you. Okay, so there's no questions on the first C. We're rolling forward. So is that valuable? Because the Access to Capital program, what? How much does it cost to enroll? There's no cost to enroll in the Access to Capital. And right off the bat, they're able to start leveraging some tremendous value in addition to the financial literacy, in addition to building the lender compliant loan package, in addition to the guaranteed 100,000, we can help them build their business credit and help them optimize their personal credit if needed. Big deal. All right, so now we're to the second C. I'll just scroll on up here so you'll see what's coming. The second C is collateral. Do all sources of capital require collateral? No, we know that that's the universal truth. There's not one required element for all sources of capital. However, some sources of capital require it, many prefer that the borrower have collateral to pledge. Why do you think that that might be important to the lender? Why do you think that the lender would care about collateral? Well, if the borrower should not repay as agreed, the lender would like to have something to go grab onto to try to mitigate their losses. And that's especially important if it's a working capital loan. If the client is buying automobiles or equipment or real estate, then that in itself can serve as collateral. but most of our clients are looking either for an entire capital raise of working capital, or at least part of it. And so that's where this topic comes into play. As most of you know and should know, we do have our Collateral Support Program, CSP for short. That is a legal, ethical, and very effective way to add collateral for clients. So it's technically adding income producing accounts receivable to the client's balance sheet. Probably, I don't want to say the most friction that we have, but probably the one element that goes into the client's Dropbox that we get the most pushback, we'll say that, the most pushback on is the balance sheet. You'll have clients probably that'll tell you, certainly those tell us, well, I'm a startup business, I don't have a balance sheet. Well, you should, you need one. You should be able to create one. We can show you how. Well, there's not going to be anything on it. Well, listen to yourself when you just said that. So you've got a business that has no assets, no liabilities granted, but no assets. And here you want to go borrow hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Do you think that looks good to the lender? Probably not, right? So what we can do is help them add assets in the form of income producing accounts receivable to their balance sheet. And if you want more information, it is on this link. Are there any questions on collateral, the second C, before we move forward? Okay, let's move on to the third C. The third C is capacity and cash flow. Those terms can be used somewhat interchangeably, but to no surprise in either case, whatever you want to call it, some sources of capital would like to have confidence that the borrower can afford to pay back the debt. Isn't that amazing, right? Can you imagine the nerve of a bank wanting to know if you can afford to pay back the loan that you're trying to take out? Of course, it makes perfect sense, right? Now, do all sources of capital require demonstrated capacity or cash flow? No. Do some just accepted as stated or as reported with no verification? That's true. However, in general, it sure would be good to look credible enough on paper to show that you can afford to pay back what you're hoping to borrow. And if the only way that you hope to pay it back is from borrowed proceeds, that is a big freaking red flag to the lender. Because all you're doing, if you don't demonstrate that you can afford to pay the payments, unless you borrow the money to pay the payments, that is alarming. Now, again, we've been successful in helping clients that have no demonstrated capacity, no demonstrated cash flow, raise capital, but this is certainly one of the three C's that is advisable. You can imagine that, right? So what is it that we do to improve a client's capacity and cash flow? In fact, we have two different resources. The first is the Collateral Support Program. You might say, well, Tom, we just talked about that. Well, you're exactly right. It's also collateral. But since each of these notes receivables or accounts receivables that's included in the portfolio have revenue attached to them, that as long as we can show the client how to use the accrual method accounting, which is just a switch or a button in QuickBooks, for example, now all of a sudden it adds monthly income to their business. So even though they might have just started the business, we can show on the income statement that in fact there is income coming in, and that gives the lenders obviously confidence. And that also helps on the balance sheet to be able to show accounts receivable, which is an asset. So the first way that we can help clients is the Collateral Support Program in increasing their capacity or cash flow. And then secondly, some people are just broke. And so if they're just broke and they just need some cash flow to take care of getting the business set up properly, to get their key person policy, to improve their fundability, whatever their need may be, of course, they can become a regional vice president or even just become a white label partner under you as an RVP. Information's on the 4-week funding. And of course, there's no cost. Scott will help get the landing pages set up. Okay, so at this point, we're on the third C of the 4 C's, And we're talking about what is the secret to getting at least 100,000. And it is to have a lender compliant loan package and meet the underwriting criteria based around the 4 C's. And we've clarified multiple times, do you have to have all 4 C's? Absolutely not. Is the more the better? Of course. And we're going through what those 4 C's mean and how we help them. All right, so we're down to the final stretch, aren't we? So we're on the 4th C, which is C for commercial address. So again, do all sources of capital require the client to have a unique commercial address? Absolutely not. Is it helpful? It is. It can be helpful in a couple of regards. It makes the business look more credible on paper, and also it can open up access to certain types of funding, like the Chapman Fund I'll talk about in a moment, that wouldn't be available otherwise. So we can provide clients a unique commercial business address if they need, if they want. It does include geographic access to the Chapman Fund. We've talked about the Chapman Fund before, but I'll just summarize it. So the Chapman Fund is not a bank loan. It is through a taxing authority. The downside is they'll only go up to 250,000. So we may need to use this in conjunction with other sources of capital for your clients that need more than $250,000. But it's easier to get. It's through a taxing authority. They want to loan the money. They want to loan the money. And it is affordable, easier to access, but it's again, tax supported. Therefore, the geographic location of the business matters, because the taxes that are providing the Chapman Fund are coming from a specific area. So to no surprise, they only want to help businesses that are in that same geographic area. Makes sense, right? And so there's more information on the cheap business address here. So I'm going to shrink this down a bit, and I want to drill into the questions, comments, concerns that each of you have. All right, so Joseph's on the line. He's one of our top white label partners. He's a licensed real estate agent, also RVP out of Arkansas, and he's emphasizing the importance of this, that just to paraphrase what Joseph's saying, this is crucial. I mean, this is the secret sauce. This is why we can make the promise of helping clients raise at least $100,000, is because we work with them to improve their underwriting, their credibility to meet the underwriting criteria. And so thank you, Joseph, for reinforcing that. It's crucial to understand this is what makes the model work. Now, some clients will come to us and they don't need any help. They just need the loan package, find the right source of capital, and they don't need any manipulation or improvement of any of their 4 C's. And that's fine. That's a beautiful thing. But a lot of our clients will need help. Joseph also asked me to remind you that we don't have any prerequisites. So a client could come to you with crappy credit and no collateral and no cash flow and no commercial address, and they're perfectly welcome to participate in the program. And really, that's who Joseph focuses on, is that subprime population, and that can work out fine. All right, next, Winston. Winston's asking about the Chapman Fund down here. And so, yes, we would help the client get their commercial address. And the commercial address is in the commercial building we're sitting in right now. I'm literally sitting in it at this moment. And the commercial address is a unique commercial address, so it meets that criteria. And of course, it is in the taxing district of the Chapman Fund. That is right, Winston. All right, so who else has any questions, comments, concerns regarding the 4 C's? Because I don't think this is necessarily what you go out and you lead your conversation with when you're talking to prospects. You know, the main hot buttons are, hey, let's get you enrolled in the Access to Capital program. There's no upfront cost to enroll, guaranteed $100,000 capital raise, first tranche of financing, typically in 5 to 7 days. hey, there's no risk, let's give it a try. So that's the abbreviated normal pitch. This is the layer deeper if you wanted to, well, you need to know, but if you wanted to explain to anyone, if they contested and they said, I call bullshit on that. There's no way that you can help anyone get $100,000. Well, why would you say that? Do you think that people can't meet the underwriting criteria? We're not saying that they all meet it already. They may or may not. That's why we go through the 4-week process. And if they do meet it, then we immediately go to funding. That's great for them, great for you, great for us. Everybody's happy, happy, happy. If they don't meet enough of the criteria of any relevant sources of capital, then we need to roll up our sleeves and work on it, right? That's how it works. And it could be improving credit, business or personal. It could be improving collateral. It could be improving capacity, cash flow, or it could be providing them a commercial address. Timothy asked a really good question, and this is, it's a deep question, so thank you, Timothy. So Timothy is asking, well, what if a client enrolls in access to capital? They don't automatically meet the underwriting criteria, and they don't want to do anything. They don't want to improve their credit. They don't want to improve their collateral. They don't want to improve their capacity or cash flow. They don't want to be credible enough to have a commercial address. Well, I mean, we'll work with them as they wish, but obviously as technical advisors, we can guide them of how to get from where they're at to where they need to be. We can take the path at the speed that they wish. But at the end of the day, Timothy, you know as well as I do, the way that you get funding is that you meet the underwriting criteria of the selected source. And so they won't get funded until they meet the criteria. So that's a very good point, Timothy. Winston's asking a good point about locating a business. It is not unusual at all to base a business in a different state than the one you reside in, especially because of taxing differences. So we're in Texas, there's no state income tax. And so that can save clients an immense amount of money. Clients sometimes will file in Wyoming or Nevada for other types of privacy or protection purposes. So it is permissible to file a business, form a business in a state different than one resides. I think what Winston's getting to, though, is a good point, is that if we have a client that wants to tap into the Chapman Fund or just simply needs a commercial business address, what we've often seen, it's not a requirement, but often what they'll do is they'll just start a separate entity specifically for the purpose of their capital raise. So they don't have to go back and change everything that's on record of their current business. And then we do the capital raise off of the new start that does meet the criteria. So that would be an option. All right, so who else has questions, comments, concerns about what we've covered today on the 4 C's? Give me a little feedback, if you would, in the question and answer. Is this helpful? Were you aware of the 4 C's and how it fits into this model, or is this new information that was useful? I don't know from your perspective. If you could offer just a moment and respond in the Q&A what your feedback is on our topic of the 4 C's. So Winston, Al, Antoine, April, Ben, Bernard, Charles, Corey, Donald, Gigi, Jasper, Joseph, Lee, Mr. Rich, scroll down, Pauline, Renee, Terry, Wayne, Zahn, and others. Okay, so Mr. Rich is asking, he's not giving me the feedback, I asked where he's asking a question, which is fine. So he's asking, is the Chapman Fund available all across the country? No, it's from a local taxing district that only covers a 14 county area. So that's why I was making a big deal about it. Having a unique commercial business address is valuable. It's frankly pretty much required to build business credit, by the way. But the Chapman Fund is a taxing authority based source of capital. And since it comes from taxes of people in a 14 county area, guess what? They only want to fund businesses in that 14 county area. All right, Pauline says, very helpful. Thank you. Gigi says she has a better understanding now. Excellent. Thank you. That was our goal. Winston says, not new, but helpful. Good. And Mr. Rich is still on the Chapman Fund. So it's the 14 county area in East Texas, and our commercial business address is located there. That's why we bought this property in this location. So again, let's just tie this together and make sure that we're on the same page. So what we do together are three things. We help clients through the Access to Capital program. We help them build their financial literacy. We help them create a lender compliant loan package, and we help them meet the underwriting criteria to access a minimum of $100,000 guaranteed. Well, how do we go about getting approvals for capital? It's by meeting the underwriting criteria. There are many different sources of capital. Each of them have their own underwriting criteria. Some of them look only at credit. Some of them only look at business credit. Some of them only look at personal credit. Some of them only look at collateral. Some of them only look at capacity and cash flow. Some take into consideration commercial address. So you don't have to have all the 4 C's, but the more of the 4 C's we have, the better off we are. We'll be able to, in a very objective and consultative way, guide a client to where the deficiencies are once in their profile, once we've gone through the 4-week process. Because what we don't want to do is have people do things and spend money on things that doesn't get them from where they're at to where they need to be. So for instance, let's say the source of capital that they're pursuing is just business credit based. So we've gone through the 4 weeks, we've got a feeling, we have an understanding of who they are, where they're going, what their credibility factors are. And let's say we're going after 100% business credit based capital raise. Even if they had trashy credit, would we be recommending the 60-day credit suite or adding trade lines to their personal credit? No, because it's irrelevant, right? So what we want to do, and this is difficult sometimes because this is a double-edged sword. What we'd prefer to do is go through the 4 weeks, go through the 4 modules, gather the data, and then address what needs to be worked on then. The good thing is then we don't waste the client's time, energy, or money on credibility improvements that aren't directly associated with the capital raise path that we're going to be on, because we don't know what the capital raise path is typically until we get through the 4 weeks and collect the modules. The downside of, so that's the good side. The downside of that though is, let's say we get through the 4 weeks and then realize, okay, your business credit is going to matter, and you don't have established business credit, which we discern by going through the 4 modules and the data collection process. We need to go ahead and work on building your business credit if we're going to go after XYZ source of capital. And you might have a client say, well, why are you waiting until now? I've been in this damn program for 4 weeks, and here you are now making recommendations. Why didn't you make that day 1? Well, the reason is what I said before. Until we know really what the capital raise strategy should be for the client, we don't know what they need to have to be able to reconcile, do they meet the underwriting criteria or not? But I think in general, we can serve the client best by not pitching them, okay, well, let's spend the next 60 days and build your Dun & Bradstreet PAYDEX score. Let's not spend the next 60 days and sweep your credit. Let's not worry about adding 100,000 or more collateral on. Let's, instead of proposing changes on the fly, it's best, in my opinion, let's get all the data collected. Let's see where they're at. Let's create a capital raise strategy, and then let's fix any holes that are in the boat as needed. But let's not drill a new hole just to create more effort by the client. Okay, so thank you, Zahn, for your feedback. All right, so Mr. Rich is still on the Chapman Fund. So you're right. We offer, Mr. Rich, a unique commercial address for clients. We have clients from all over the country that house their businesses at our commercial address. They don't have to do that, but it does provide them a unique commercial address. It's not free, but it's almost free. And it does provide them geographic access to the Chapman Fund. So this is a resource that we make available. But again, I'm not shotgunning this out to everyone. I'm going through and attempting to educate that there are 4 C's, and the secret to getting at least 100,000 is having a loan package, but meeting the underwriting criteria. And we've gone through the 4 C's. We've talked about credit, both business and personal. We've talked about collateral. We've talked about capacity/cash flow and the relevance of commercial addresses. All right, is there anything else that you would like us to cover today? Anything else on the 4 C's? And yes, I'll send this out. Thank you, Corey. I'll send this out to everyone, this little cheat sheet here. All right, well, great. Wonderful to talk to you. You have a great day, and we'll visit next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.